Hey, this is Mark Lichtenwalter, Red Pill Mormon, the host of Zion's Redemption Radio Network on YouTube and the admin of LDS Last Days Prophecy and Gospel Discussions. So today is the 17th day of September 2025, and I am currently in Mexican Hat in southern Utah, headed down to Chandler, Arizona, south of Phoenix. I think it's funny, before I get into what I want to talk about, this town, when you come into Mexican Hat, it says Mexican Hat established 400 something AD. Oh, it's funny. Anyway, all right, so what did I want to talk about today? So I was talking to another creator on here on TikTok, and I'm going to post this on YouTube, so as well, but and then whatever. But anyway, so um, and he's a non-believer, or well, I don't know if he's a non-believer. He just doesn't believe the church is true, which whatever. I completely agree with him. The church is not all that it claims to be. But anyway, so he wanted to know if I'd shared my story in full on this social media app, TikTok. So, I've been thinking about doing this for a little while, and I thought, well, you know what? I think I'll do it now. So, I've got plenty of time. I still have 6 hours of driving, so I turned off my cell phone because whenever I do a video, if somebody calls me or whatever, it interrupts the video. So I don't have the greatest service down here anyway. So I'll talk to my wife and kids later because they always want to call me and talk to me for hours on it, which I love. But all right, so um, I have to go back to the beginning because, well, you'll understand. So my grandparents on both sides are converts to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. My grandparents on my mother's side, my grandfather lost both of his legs in World War II, saving his platoon from uh, some machine guns that were up on the ridge. So his platoon was in a turkey shoot. He was not with them because he'd already been shot and something anyway. But he was being taken care of by the medics, and then he found out that his platoon was in a turkey shoot. So he decided he didn't need the medic anymore, and he flanked the machine gun nests up on the ridge and took out both four Japanese gunmen. Anyway, for his efforts, he got shot up pretty bad, and he took out the first two in the first nest, and then he wouldn't stop cussing, so they kept shooting at him, and he finally just shut up. The only reason I know this stuff is because it's in the old articles that I have. Anyway, but so anyway, he pulled himself on his hands and knees out to close enough to the other nest, and he was out of bullets, and he had one grenade left and his knife, and he was able to get the grenade close enough to stun the two individuals, and then he went in and took care of them with his knife, and then he passed out and he died. And he said it was a dark place, but there was a man there, and the man told him that his mission in life was not over with and that he needed to go back. So he woke up on the medical ship with both of his legs amputated below the knee, and they had to actually fight gangrene. So he got very sick, lost his hair at the age of 20, I believe. Anyway, but my grandmother was a Navy Corps nurse. So at Angel Island in San Francisco Bay, that's where they met. And after he was able to learn how to walk on wooden legs, which he walked on for the rest of his life, he became somebody who would go all over the place and give speeches for the war effort. So some of the articles that they were titled "The Man Who Silenced the Bullets." So he was a pretty, you know, he was a war hero, but he was also raised up in Chicago, and at the age of 13, there was a gang that was bullying him, and he attacked the leader of the gang in a fist fight, and he almost killed him. So they made him the leader of the gang. Anyway, so he's pretty violent. Anyway, my grandmother had converted to the LDS Church at the age of 17, so they were both born in 1923. My grandfather, after the war was over, he went back to Angel Island and told my grandmother, I want to marry you, and if you would marry me, I'm going to be at this hotel, and I'm leaving on a train for Chicago in the morning. And if you want to marry me, meet me at the hotel. And so she did. And they took the train up to Sacramento and got married. And I believe that was in 1945. So my grandfather was whiskey drinking, whatever, until he was 35, and then he repented and he had his conversion experience and whatnot. So because my grandparents were both veterans, and because my grandfather was 100% disabled um, because of the loss of his legs, they didn't have to work. But my grandfather did. He used the money that he was able to get, and he did lots of projects, mining, gold mining, uranium mining. Eventually, when I was a little kid, they bought an opal mine and did that for many years of my early childhood. Um, and he did other things like building neighborhoods and stuff. But they also, um, when they were living in Tonopah, Nevada, they were called on a mission, and they had three daughters. My aunt, who is the second oldest, um, she came along when the other one was 12 years old. So then my mom came a year or two or something like that afterwards. Anyway, but by the time my mom was about 6 or 7, they were called as missionaries, and they were able to go out on a mission as husband and wife and bring their kids with them. So different times back then, I guess. Anyway, I think there were like one of only two families in the church at the time who were allowed to do that. So anyway, my grandparents ended up serving 7 missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Um, my mother was very rebellious, and she did not follow in their footsteps. Um, so my mom and dad were married in 75, I think. Yep, 75. When he and she were both born like a week apart or something like that in 1957. So anyway, my mom had a baby and miscarried at 17 weeks, and then she got pregnant again. And I guess I was the only one that was planned because I did have um, 2 other sisters by my mom and my dad, me being the oldest living. And then my mom had another one, and then my dad and mom got divorced because he became a heavy drug addict and very not a great guy at the time. So anyway, so my mom leaves my dad when I'm 3, and she's got a 2-year-old, and then um, she doesn't know that she's pregnant with my youngest sister by them both. Anyway, so um, when I was 2, um, my mom was living in Florida with my dad and his dad. And I don't know what happened, but apparently I was abandoned to some strangers. And my grandparents went and found me, and then they raised me up on and off all the way through my young adult life. Um, but it was on and off. So by the time my conversion, and by the time I went to the mission field for the LDS Church, I wrote down in my journal all of the places that I had lived and how many times I lived there, because I would go back to the same places sometimes. Sometimes I wouldn't. But I lived with my grandparents on and off my whole life. All right. So my grandparents would go to church every week, but they would often leave after sacrament meeting because my grandfather had something called phantom leg pain, which is where you can still feel the cramps in your legs that aren't there. And so he'd have to put morphine patches on his stumps. And there's a couple times when I was a kid where he had to go to the hospital because it got so bad. So anyway, so I was kind of raised up in the church, kind of not. My mom married a guy when I was 6 years old because she got pregnant. And my brother, like, they had a marriage, a wedding, and then my brother came along, I don't know, shortly thereafter. Anyway, so, but he was a guy that was raised in an LDS family, but oh, there's a white burro. Oh, that's a horse. So, real quick, I just came up from Chandler the night before last, and when I turned onto Highway 191 to come up, it's like 5 miles from the main road up to um, Arizona. When I made the turn to go up, or no, to Utah, there was 2 white burros, like pure white, standing in front of me on the road. I had to actually come to almost a complete stop before they moved. Anyway, tangent. Sorry about that. So, so my stepdad was raised by military. So all of my grandparents were all military, and my stepdad was military. And anyway, so he was raised by a very harsh military guy. And Dean, his dad, was a drill instructor in the Air Force. So not as bad as he could have been, but he was a prick. Anyway, so his son, who was the oldest, raised me, who was the oldest, like he was raised, if that makes any sense. Very strict. I had to have a gig line. I had to cut my hands in a certain way. If I didn't hold my fork right or eat right, I was punished for it. In fact, my mother finally left him when he stabbed me at the age of 12 years old. And I don't know if you can see this, but there is a scar right. That's hard to see on the camera. Anyway, because I wasn't holding my fork right. So I always had to sit next to him. I was terrified as a kid. My mom did try to go to church a couple of times when we lived in Okinawa, Japan. So I do remember going to church sometimes with them, but not very often. And then my grandparents threatened my mom that she would be out of the will if she didn't get me baptized back in 1986, April of 86. So anyway, so I was baptized in 86. No, it was March or April of 86. Anyway, so I was baptized, but we didn't go to church hardly ever. Um, so eventually my mom divorced that guy when I was 12 because he stabbed me. But like, this was like years of ongoing physical and mental abuse. not only that, there was some other abuse that was going on. I'm not going to talk about that on this video, but it was a lot. So anyway, when my mom divorced my stepdad, my grandparents bought her a house so that we could have a home. And my mom got a job um, working at SBS, which is a telemarketer thing, and we lived in Clearfield, Utah. I think it's telemarketer, bill collections or something. Anyway, so it's right by North Davis Medical Center, which used to be Humana, was actually where I was born in, in June of 1977. Anyway, so we did go to church more there, but my mom used the church to get food and money to pay her bills and feed us. We didn't have a lot of money. She used to go take onions out of the bar ditch on the side of the road that would fall off of the trucks during harvest and collect them all up and make onion soup. And then on Saturdays we'd go to RC Willie's down the road in Syracuse to get hot dogs so that we could have something to eat. So food stamps and the whole thing, like it was kind of hard. Anyway, but she used, and I was very angry because of the things that she allowed me to do and the things that she did to me when I was younger, which is stuff I'm not going to get into, but it was bad. It was bad. Anyway, and I haven't spoke to either my mom and dad in years and years and years. They're not worth even talking to. I don't care. I'm done with them. Toxic type people in my life. But anyway, so my mom would get up on a fast and testimony meeting and talk about how bad I was, right? And she was always trying to get me kicked out for whatever. Like even when I wasn't doing anything, trying to stay home, like I'd come home or she'd pick me up at school and my bags would be packed and she would send me off to live with my aunt and uncle. Or I was even in primary children's psychiatric ward, third ward, West Wing, when I was 14 for evaluation for like 3 months. Like just blindsided. She'd rip me out of school. In fact, she ripped me out of school when I was in 10th grade, even though I was trying to do all this stuff just to stay home. Because all I ever wanted was just to stay with my mom. And anyway, but I was on swim team because I wasn't wrestling, but I broke my tailbone or dislocated it. Anyway, but I was on swim team. I was volunteering at the library. I was in the ROTC, I was in the Star Trek Club, and I don't know, those other things. And so the assistant coach would come to the house at like 4:30 every morning and pick me up, and we'd go lift weights and swim every morning. And I I went from being a bean pole when I was 10 years old to being fat very quickly. I've got stretch marks all over my whole body. And yeah, it was a mess. Anyway, so, but I was athletic, even though I was, and always have since I've been 10, have been a big guy. Anyway, but so I'd work out every morning. We do swim Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'd do weights on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then after school, we would swim, like the whole team would swim for hours. And then my assistant coach would take me home because he was on his way back home or whatever, and he was cool. Anyway, but so like I was doing all the stuff I could to like stay out of the house so that they couldn't blame me for whatever they wanted to blame me for, but it didn't work. So my mom took me, showed up to one of the what do you call it? Like a donation swim. I don't know what they call them. Like a fundraiser or whatever. We were doing a 5 mile swim for charity. Anyway, so she takes me and takes me up to Soda Springs, and this is not the first time I went to live with my aunt and uncle, but it was the last time. Anyway, so I started 10th grade up there, and then a month before 10th grade ended, They pulled me out of school and said, we have to get jobs before the summer's over with or before the summer begins so that, excuse me, so that you can get a job before all the other kids get a job. So they got this single wide trailer house in Kaysville, Utah. So we were living in Soda Springs. We go down to Kaysville, Utah. They get this rental trailer house, single wide, in this trailer park in North Kaysville. And and I get a job, and I'm at work at Burger Stop, which is right. It's on Gentile, right by the Layton High School, and I had a motorcycle. I was 16 years old, and my aunt comes to work, and she says, "Hey, I'm going to go see my husband in Soda Springs. Here's the keys to the place, and I'll be back in a couple days." So I went, and I went home, and all their stuff was gone, and there was a note on the counter that said, "You are 16 years old, and you're not my responsibility, and you're old enough to take care of yourself." So anyway, been on my own ever since. Uh, the the landlord found out. He kicked me out. I ended up living in the rafters of some guy's garage, and did that for like a month or two. And then my grandparents found me again, and they gave me their motor home so I could work at this place in Hamer, Idaho, hauling potatoes for the potato harvest. Anyway, and I got into Job Corps in Clearfield, Utah at the end of the potato harvest, and I got my GED with honors because I think my overall score was like 97%. Took me 2 days to get it. Anyway, oh, okay. So when I was in Job Corps, oh, I was going to tell you the thing. So my mom would get up at testimony meetings when I was like 13, 14, 15, and she would tell everybody what a horrible kid I was and how hard her life was and all of this. So, like, I was bullied at school a lot, but after that, I was bullied by like the deacons and the teachers and like, so I hated the LDS church because of the hypocrisy that I saw and the kind of crap that I was dealing with. Anyway, so when I went to Job Corps, I met a Baptist guy in 1994, and I completely believed all of the things that he told me about Joseph Smith, and believed that Joseph Smith was an angel, or that Moroni was an angel of light, and Joseph Smith was a false prophet, and blah blah blah, whatever. Anyway, but I ate it all up. So I got very anti-Mormon, became Southern Baptist, and I was saved on November 25th, 1994, which I believe that day was Thanksgiving, but I can't remember. Anyway, it was right around that time. But it was on November 25th, 1994. Started going to church with him. Anyway, so when I eventually graduated from Job Corps, like things got really hard for me, and I ended up homeless. And then I had been suicidal since the age of 9. In fact, my mom and my stepdad were in Okinawa for 2 years. I was only there for a year because of how bad the abuse got, which mainly came from my stepdad, but also it came from other people as well. It was bad, and I told my mom that I wanted to kill myself and I was tired of living. And now I'm in Arizona, just barely. This road between the Utah state line and the road that I'm going to be turning onto is so bad. It's only 5 miles, but it goes from 65 to 55 because of how bad the dang road is. Ugh, which I'm sure you can see by me bouncing around. So I've got my cruise control set at 55. Anyway, so but yeah, I became homeless and I was very suicidal. And I had a job driving truck out of Bountiful, Utah, hauling produce every morning we'd get together at 3:30 in the morning and load the trucks, and then we had to run produce all over the Wasatch Front, third, from Nephi all the way up to like Logan in that area. And then when we got back, we had to sort through rotten uh, produce. My gosh, this flipping road. Anyway, I hate this road. I'm on the Indian reservation too, but Arizona does not want to fix this road. Ugh. Even though it's very heavily traveled on Highway 191. Anyway, but I would be sick all the time because of the spores and the pollen of all of this rotting produce in this warehouse that we'd have to sort through, and just the mold and all this stuff. Anyway, so I eventually quit that job, ended up homeless. I did have a car, went out to San Francisco, lived in my car. And this is the summer of the spring and summer and fall of '96. Anyway, eventually my car was stolen, and I was staying with a friend, and he was telling me I needed to get a job, but like I could barely walk because I hurt my back. I've always had a bad back. But anyway, like I could barely walk. Anyway, I was going to be homeless again, and this is the fall of 1996, and I decided, you know what? I've wanted to die for so many years, but I was scared to death of going to hell. But I just got to the point where I was like over it. So during that time, I started using a lot of drugs, mostly marijuana, cocaine, crack, and tons of alcohol. Like I would drink, if I could get a bottle of dry gin, and it was like $3 for a bottle, I would suck it down every night. Like if I had a job, I'd suck it down every night after work. And then if I didn't have a job, it didn't matter. So anyway, I ended up homeless, and I was going to be homeless again in the wintertime, and I decided to end it. So I was going to use a Magnum 357. My friend who I was staying with, when I went to find it where it was, he had taken it and did something with it, so I couldn't use the gun. So I went to a, uh, a store, and I had a whole bunch of alcohol, I had a whole bunch of pills, and I I bought painter's plastic, and I put it in this area on this beanbag where I was going to do the deed. And then I had ace bandages I wrapped around both arms so that my veins would pop out. And everywhere, and then I didn't have a razor blade, so I broke apart one of those disposable razor blades and used the razor blade from that, which is very sharp, and just cut the crap out of everything. In fact, this is a long time ago, but you can still see a lot of these scars all over my arms, my hands, my arms, my elbows, all the way up and down both sides. I did tic-tac-toe on in the elbows where the big artery goes through. In fact, it was so bad that they couldn't stitch it. They had to glue it together. So anyway, I tried to do this thing. My roommate had forgotten his lunch, and he came home at lunch, and he found me, and he called 911, and they saved my life. Okay, that's why I wasn't successful. I had overdosed on aspirin and a whole lot of wine because I knew that if my blood was thin, I would be able to it'd flow out and it wouldn't clot. So that was my goal. Anyway, so after I got out of the hospital, I am more clear-minded, and um, I ended up writing God a letter. And I'd been using drugs because I wanted to die so badly, but I couldn't do it because I was scared to death. So I was using drugs to like drown out my pain. And okay, I'm getting on Highway 160 West, and it's 191, headed towards Cayente. I think that's a swear word in some language. Oh, maybe it means crazy. I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. What the heck? Oh, okay. All right. Sorry about that. Driving and dealing with things. So, so I wrote God this letter. And oh, by the way, I was like completely goth at this time. I had like 20 something piercings in my face, if that's believable. Lots in my ears. Here, there was three. I had them in my nose. I had them my eyebrows. Anyway, I even had one in my tongue for a while, but I didn't like it because it just bothered me. Anyway, doesn't matter. So, like, I wrote God a letter, and I had been mad at him because he allowed me to go through all these things, right, in life. And, but I wrote him a letter and I said, if you will heal me, talking about my drug addictions, and you will show me the truth, I will serve you for the rest of my life. And it wasn't long after that that Elder King and Elder Bowman showed up at my door, and I was actually leaving to go watch Romeo and Juliet in the movie theater, '96. So anyway, I was gonna walk down to the movie theater, so they were at the doorstep. Anyway, I told them, hey, I'm going to watch this movie. Like, you can come by another day, whatever. Just trying to be nice to them, but I wasn't interested in their shtick, their thing. Anyway, so they kept coming back, and they would be like, hey, we're gonna come over, and then I'd like book it out of there, and I'd just be like, nope. But after 3 weeks, I finally did listen to them, and when I listened to them, now I'd heard the Joseph Smith story before, but I really wasn't interested. Okay, and I wasn't interested this time either. But I finally said, okay, fine, I'll listen. So they gave me the whole missionary discussion, and come on. Okay, never mind. All right, so they gave me the missionary discussion, and it was the first time in a long time I'd actually felt peace. And they taught me um, that God could answer my prayers like He answered Joseph Smith's prayers. And they taught me how to pray. And when they left, I knelt down on my knees, and I was completely alone. And I was kneeling down on my knees, and I was asking God, "Is this true? Is Joseph Smith a prophet? Is the Book of Mormon true?" And I had this peace come upon me, but not only that, it was like God was pouring hot oil, like not burning hot, but like hot oil in my whole soul, and it flowed down. I could feel it flowing down through my fingertips, through my toes, everything, like completely combined with love and all this other stuff. And in that instant, I was completely healed from all of my drug addictions, my tobacco, my alcoholism, 100%. So first time I go to church after my conversion, I'm all gothed out because that's like the only clothes that I had, and I actually scared the crap out of a bunch of these Mormons in Layton, Utah. Um, but I went to sit with the missionaries, and then, like, I guess they realized, hell, he's an investigator. Oh man, I could only imagine, like, just how like, it was dead silent. Like, everybody's talking right before, and it was like a stake. I can't remember. The first one was a stake conference, or the first one was a ward conference, but it was, and there's lots of people talking, and then, and then they all like turn their heads and they're staring at this kid all in black. I had oxygen deficiency disorder, so I didn't have color in my skin. Um, like I was in a very unhealthy, I looked very unhealthy, and piercings in my face and all this stuff. I think I took the piercings out, but anyway, so eventually, not long after my conversion, I did end up homeless again, and the LDS people wouldn't help me. The missionaries couldn't do anything, and uh, nobody had helped me. I did get food stamps from the state government, so that helped. And I got a bus pass, and so this is the winter. This is December of '96 through into the last part of January '97. Well, my grandfather had a dream, or a dream. He said that he woke up, and he only had an experience like this one time, as far as he told me. He heard an audible voice when he was laying in bed one morning. He would, before he'd put his legs on, wooden legs, he heard he was laying or sitting up in bed or something, and he said that he heard a voice, and the voice told me to find me and send me on a mission. Now, I tried to take my name out of the church in 1990, late 94, early 95, and I knew where the records were, and I knew where my membership was, but they said, well, you can't take your name out of the church unless you're an adult, so whatever. Bishop Ron Brown of the Clearfield something ward or whatever. Anyway, so, um, but he knew that I was very anti-Mormon. So I hadn't spoken to him for a while, and I hadn't spoken to anybody really. They didn't care that I was homeless the first time. They didn't care I was homeless the second time. My grandparents did, but I was on the outs with them because like I'm like Southern Baptist and all pissy, stupid. Anyway, so but my grandfather said somebody told him from the other side, great, I just got a flippin' crack in my window because somebody passed me in a construction zone. Just happened. Probably heard it. Anyway, so yes, right in my view too. Great. Anyway, so he calls my mom, and he's all like, you need to go find him. He was in Richfield, Utah, where his winter house was, and their summer house was in Spencer, Idaho. So my mom knew that I had worked at a movie buffs in Layton, Utah, across from Reams on State Street. I think it was State Street. I think it was State Street. Anyway, so she goes up there, and my friend Amber and my ex-boyfriend Brad, because I went down that road for a while, just because I like. So I'm going to tell you this. My mother sexually abused me as a young child, and I know that it's nuts. Who would ever do a thing like that? But because of what she did, um, and I don't know if she ever felt sorry for it, but she sure was trying to get rid of me all the time. Anyway, that's why I don't talk to her anymore. That's one of the reasons. Anyway, but so I thought, well, I feel more comfortable around guys than I do girl, so maybe I'm gay. So me and Brad were a thing for a while, and never had never had sex or anything like that, but we did kiss and all of that. So anyway, so my friend Brad, um, who was my ex boyfriend at that point, like I would go in there sometimes, and they told my mom, hey, he does come in here sometimes, but he's homeless. And anyway, so the next time I went in there to that movie buffs, um, Amber told me my mom's been looking for me, and there was a note that she had left there in case I came back. And so I call my mom, who lives in Taylorsville, Utah, and they come and pick me up, and she notifies my grandparents. And anyway, so the voice told him to find me and send me on a mission, which is kind of weird because my grandpa knew that I was very anti-Mormon and like Southern Baptist. He didn't know about the conversion, and I don't know if he knew about the drug addiction, but like anyway, so so she comes and gets me and gathers up me and my things, and we went to Taylorsville. My grandparents rode up um, from Richfield, Utah, and I think it's in Sevier County. And Taylorsville is in Salt Lake County. So my grandpa, he says, either I'm going to pay for you to go to university. And by the way, I did get my GED with honor in 2 days, but my IQ when I was 14 and in Primary Children's Hospital is 147. So because of the drugs, it had gone down. But it's back up. But I still have some brain fog because of all the drugs that I did. Anyway, so he was going to pay for me he's going to pay for my room and board, and he was going to pay for me to go to college. Um, he wanted me to go to the Utah State University. I think that was it, the one in Salt Lake. Anyway, but he didn't, or I could go on a mission. He did not know about my conversion. So anyway, I ended up going. I told him, about my conversion, and with them serving 7 missions, they're like, we'll teach you how to be a missionary because they had their own missionary plan. So anyway, so I go down. I talk to Bishop Larson, and um, and like I hadn't been having any sex, but I had been a drug addict. But he knew the whole story, and they were like, okay, well, if you had sex, then you have to wait a year. But if you were a drug addict, you're fine. So anyway, yeah, I got my mission called to Macon, Georgia, and I got my endowments in the Salt Lake Temple, which is something I haven't talked about why I chose that place, because in 1994, when I was Baptist, I was caught up in the Spirit, and Jesus Christ brought me into the Salt Lake City Temple, and sorry, he brought me through the temple, and he brought me up into the middle tower on the eastern side, um, just under the Angel Moroni. There's actually a room there. And it's kind of interesting because I didn't know it at the time, but there's like a south side and a north side circular window on that middle tower. There's a room there. Anyway, so Jesus brought me up into this room, and he instructed me to go into this room. And when I walked into that room, it was like walking into love times infinity. It was so powerful. And the Father spoke to me, but I did not see him at that time. But he spoke to me, and he said that I would be the last prophet before Jesus Christ returns, or the last Lord's anointed, or just prophet, which was very confusing. I was very Baptist, very anti-Mormon, Anyway, so that happened. So that's where I got my endowments out because I wanted to see, like, I didn't know what to think about this, but I wanted to see if like what Jesus Christ showed me was correct, and everything was correct. Okay, so anyway, but yeah, so and I've had a lot of other things happen. I'm just going to leave it at that. But that's why I became a Mormon. I assumed that Joseph Smith was, uh, well, that Brigham Young was also a prophet because, well, the whole narrative is like Joseph Smith started it, but Brigham Young, whatever. Um, so maybe I'll just keep on talking about it. It's been 45 minutes already. I'll try to keep this under an hour. So I served my mission. I got nobody in my family came to see me off at the airport, so I wasn't going to see him again for 2 years. I was very sick when I went out. I had congestion. Um, when nobody came to see me because they didn't care, um, I blew my eardrums out. And by the time I got to Atlanta, Georgia, I was almost completely deaf. Ever since that time, I've had ringing in my ears, but I was deaf for almost completely deaf for like 3 months of the first part of my mission. The infection eventually went down. There's a drainage right here that goes from your ear down into the back of your throat. The infection actually went down and got into my lungs. My right lung collapsed. And then I was just having all kinds of problems. So I was in the mission field May 21st. Well, I was in the missionary training center May 21st, 1997. And then, and they had to do an evaluation on me, by the way, because I had been in a psychiatric institution. So I got to see all of the records and everything. Um, and they also did their own psych eval on me, and my IQ had gone from 147 down to 114 because of the drugs. When you smoke weed and THC, it actually is proven to it coats the neurons in your brain. So the neurons are the ending of the nerves in the brain, and there's an electrical connection that goes back and forth to communicate information. Well, with the THC, it coats the end of them, so that's why people that smoke weed, especially, but other things, that's why they become so slow. Like Cheech and Chong. Cheech isn't as bad, but Chong, anyway. um, and it took me until I was like 40, I think, before I was able to get my IQ back up to 150 now. So anyway, and it was 147 at age 14. Well, I don't know, like whatever. Anyway, so they sent me a home after 11 months, I think it was. March, April, May. Yeah, so that's 11 months. 10 months, maybe? I think I was out for 11 months. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I got sent home on medical, like, what do they call it? Like medical release or something. Anyway, so I was sent home. My mom allowed me to stay in her trailer, her tag bumper pull trailer in the driveway because her new step husband didn't like me. I can go into that too, but I won't. Anyway, so I was being treated by three different doctors, or maybe it was four. I think it was three. It could have been four. But anyway, so the whole plan was if I got released from these doctors, I could go back on the mission. But my mom said if I wasn't healed I think it was in 3 weeks or 30 days that I wouldn't be able to stay there anymore. And I'm thinking swear words right now. Anyway, I I was still sick. Was not released by the doctors, so they released me from my mission, and that was that. When I eventually did get better, and I actually went to live with my sisters who had both been on their own since they were 16. So my younger sisters, I slept on their couch, their futon mattress, in their living room. They had a 2-bedroom apartment. Anyway, so I finally get better, and like I have a CDL because I actually did graduate with a degree in the advanced diesel mechanics program, and I had a CDL. So I was like, well, I ain't got nowhere else to go and nothing else to do except for whatever. So I went and became a truck driver in 1998 and went over the road for many years. And for the most part, I've been a truck driver ever since. So I've been a truck driver except for my mission um, since 1994, but I didn't get my CDL until August of 95. And then after my mission, I went over the road as an over the road truck driver. And as you can tell, I'm still doing it. So, um, anyway, during that time, I felt bad because I didn't um, finish my mission. I told God I would serve Him for the rest of my life. So I was like, so I tried to just study um, as much as I could and learn Mormon theology and the history, and I also learned a lot of anti-Mormon stuff because I wanted to be able to talk to people and dispel their false ideas and their whatever. And I served my mission in southern Georgia, the Georgia Macon mission. So, and I had been Baptist. So, anyway, and then my grandparents, the way they taught me, they used the Bible a lot. My grandparents did to help convert people into Mormonism. Anyway, but so I was like doing all the missionary stuff, and just I'd go back to Salt Lake every couple months, maybe 2, 3 months, and then I'd go back out on the road. It was a very, very, very lonely time for me, and this is back before cell phones were affordable. If I called anybody, it would be on a phone card. There was like 3 different phone cards that we used. Like, yeah, it was a mess. Anyway, sorry, I'm in construction and there's morons out here. Anyway, so um, so I studied I studied religion, all the religions of the world, and did a comparative to all the religions of the world against the Restoration. Anyway, so I read a lot and I did a ton of missionary work and even took eventually, I took some online courses through a college. And then I actually did go to college for 2 semesters at um, Dixie State, but I was 29. Anyway, before it became a university. So, um, in 2006, I got married to my first wife in the Bountiful Temple. There's a whole long story that I'm not going to get into with that. Our marriage only lasted for 4 months to the day. So we're married on uh, June 27th, July, August, September 27th is when we finally weren't married anymore. She got an annulment. She actually told See, I was never good enough for them because I'm going to tell you something else. Okay, so um, according to her, I'm a dropout. Um, and I was a drug addict. And I also started a gang as a joke called the Mormon Mafia. Mormon Mafia! Turned into a real thing with the drugs and the selling and the whole thing. Anyway, so despite my conversion, I've always been rough around the edges, but so Rebecca is the great niece of President Hinckley, so they're Mormon royalty, and I was never good enough for her family, and they were always trying to backstab me all the time, but she wanted to marry me, and then so we were supposed to get married in May 25th of 2005, and that morning we were going to be married in the Salt Lake Temple, and then she broke it off and didn't show up. Anyway, I eventually broke it off with her in July of 2005, and I went down to St. George and just trying to get away from everything. And then my grandpa died in November of that year, and then so on May 25th, 2006, on our 1 year anniversary of the day we should have been married, she gets a hold of me and she's like, "I'm so sorry I treated you that way. I dated this guy that treated me how I used to treat you, and I promise I'll never do that ever again." And whatever. So she wants to get back together with me. So we meet up at Love's Truck Stop in Cedar City, and we go over to Zion the next day on the 26th of May, 2006. And we hiked Angel's Landing, which I'd done probably 10, 15 times. I love Angel's Landing, by the way. Even as a big guy, if you've been on that hike, you know that's a hard hike. I love Angel's Landing. Anyway, Walter's Wiggles about killed me the first time I tried it, but whatever. I used to do the elliptical for 6 miles 5 days a week. Back then, I'd go to the gym every day before I'd go to work. So anyway, we went up to Angel's Landing and we talked about things and actually got engaged up there on Angel's Landing, and we got married on June 27th. Well, she lasted about 3 days before she started getting back into how she was before. Anyway, it got to be too much for both of us, and I spent more time away from her than with her, and um, I was undiagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, so I had some issues that I was dealing with. Also, because of what I have gone through, the neurons in my brain didn't develop the way normal children do. I have something called borderline disorder. Um, and it's basically, it happens with people who have gone through severe abuse. Basically, everything is black or white for them. It's either all good or all bad or whatever. So um, I whatever. So we break apart. I tried to commit suicide again, and, and while I was in the hospital, she got the annulment, and apparently she told the judge, and I wasn't there, but she told the judge that the reason she wanted the annulment is because I was sterile and could not give her children. I think she cursed herself because I have 5 kids. 2 of them are not living, and I have 2 stepkids. But 5 kids of my own, and 2 of them passed away. And my wife's been pregnant like 9 times with me. So, anyway, but she never had kids. She wanted a wife or a husband and kids so badly. Yeah, but I was a truck driver. I was an ex-gangbanger, even though it was all a joke, and I got out of it as soon as it got serious. I wasn't about what they were about, what it became in Ogden and Davis County. And then I guess it spread out to Reno and Sacramento area and Las Vegas. But that's what I heard. I don't know. Anyway, I kind of know, but I kind of don't, because whatever. I dropped off the face of the map with those guys um, after my conversion. So anyway, yeah. So there's like so many things that can fill in all the details, but like I could talk for hours about this. I could probably talk, if I filled in all the details, I could probably talk for like 4 or 5 hours about this. Anyway, and there is a lot of things that are very important in leaving out for the purpose of this video. But anyway, so I eventually started dating again 4 years later, and then I got engaged, and then Christmas of 2010, we were staying at her family's house, and she was 23, I was 33, and her dad became very physically abusive with her, and that, and like I've been in hundreds of fights. If you can see the scars on these knuckles, and like how this, I don't know if you can see it, but this I could pull this one out of its joint and put it back against the back of my hand, because yeah, lots of boxing fractures in these fists. Anyway, but I learned when I was homeless that like if you fight, and I was a wrestler, right? If you fight, you don't let them up. You break things and you get away. So anyway, I didn't break the dad, but I broke the son. He took a bat and was doing this, and I like shoved it right into his forehead. And anyway, that engagement fell apart. She was still going to marry me, but then Stockholm syndrome. So eventually, some other things happened with somebody else, and she was like, "Oh, God told me I shouldn't marry you," or something, whatever. So suicide again. Took 5,000 milligrams of tramadol, hung myself 3 times. I think that was at that time. But after the 5,000 milligrams of tramadol, I was like, I can't die. Um, like right before I passed out, I felt hands on my head, and I felt the spirit burning through me again. Um, and then I woke up like 7 hours later, and I was high for like 2 or 3 days, but I was still alive. So anyway, so that was um, January of 2011. I eventually realized I needed to get away and change everything and just run away. I was going to go back to Utah, but then God told me not to go back there, to stay there, because there are people who are looking to kill me there. So I eventually grabbed my friend, who is a bisexual, and he was my very good friend, Jay, and we went down to Vegas and picked up another friend, and we actually broke her out of a rehab center. Oh, Maureen should have stayed there, because what happened to her later. Anyway, we went to New Orleans and stayed with Maureen's friends, our family, cousins, I think. And then we went down to Tampa and to St. Petersburg, and yeah, ended up homeless down there while I worked. We split apart down there, and we all tried to figure out whatever we're going to do. And anyway, long story short, I set up camp down there. I'm homeless for a while, working day labor jobs just to get some money, and then well, I met my wife, and that's a whole other story. So basically, we knew each other in a text group, or like a chat group, and and we became friends. And then one day while I was at a gay resort with my friend, I think it was called Flamingos or something like that. God told me to like get out of the pool and give Kimberly a call, and I did, and he told me what to say to her, and then he told me to take her as my wife, and I said I will if she asks me, and then 3 days later she called me. So it's the second time we've ever spoken on the phone or anything like that. And she says, God, you're going to think I'm crazy, but God told me to ease your burdens and bear you children. I said, I know, he told me. And okay, so I guess we should like get to know each other. So then we started Skyping each other, and then I flew up, and that was on May 28th when we first talked for the first time. And then on June 30th, I got on an airplane and flew up to Vermont, and she picked me up, and she lived in upstate New Hampshire, and we got to know each other, and I met her family, who all thought she was crazy for marrying some stranger, and whatever. And then I met her. We drove from upstate New Hampshire down to Wilmington Beach, North Carolina, and I met most of her family, and never met her dad because he was having issues at the time, and he's dead now. So he suicided, we think. He pulled in front of, or he had a head-on with a log truck down near Wilmington, um, dead on impact. So anyway, met her family down there, and then God told her that she could make the decision to go with me and marry me, or she could go back home. But if she did that, then she would not have the opportunity to marry me. So she took a leap of faith, and we got married. 20 days after we met in person on July 20th, 2012. So, and we've been married ever since. So anyway, so that's my story. Oh, I got to tell you the one part. Okay, why am I not LDS anymore? So I made a lot of excuses for the leadership of the church because I'd learned a ton of stuff, and I was like, well, maybe people just aren't ready for it or whatever. And her mom. Now, there's something I haven't told you. So in '97, I got my patriarchal blessing. And it says in my patriarchal blessing that I have been given the greatest gift that God has to bestow, the gift of eternal life. So I've been told by a stake president and a patriarch that means that I have qualified to have my calling and election made sure. And so that was before my mission, and I kept asking God, why? How is this possible? And he said, it's not because of who you are, it's because of who you were before you came into this mortality. I'd be like, what are you talking about? How? Because, like, you got to understand, my patriarchal blessing was like 5 or 6 months after my conversion. I was a drug addict. The stake president knew it. The stake patriarch knew it. Like, everybody knew it. I was like a minor celebrity, like the story of my conversion. Like, everybody was wanting me to speak at their sacrament meetings. Anyway, but so I had this thing. I've been given the greatest gift that God has to bestow, the gift of eternal life. Well, I kept bugging God about it, and he would answer my prayers, but he wouldn't tell me why. So I kept bugging him. And in 2003, in the spring of 2003, I was on a load from Salt Lake City down to Los Angeles over the weekend. And I'd gotten down to Beaver, and I'd gotten just past Beaver to Ranch Exit 100. And And I was praying, and I was studying my scriptures, and I was trying to understand how you get your calling and election made sure, and what it is, and all this fun stuff. And I kept bugging him, and I was taken up in the flesh. I felt my body, and now I've been taken up in the spirit many, 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 many times. But this time I had been taken up in the flesh. And the difference is, like, when you're in the spirit, it's very, the density of your body's not there. It's very, I love it. I love it. My body, I've been in pain my whole life. When you're in the spirit and you're out of your body, I love it. Anyway, so, but this time I was in the flesh. And I'll just go through. I'm not going to go through all the details because it's a very long account. But I followed this path up to the top of this mountain, which is called Mount Vashel, which actually means um, the beautiful the mountain of the beautiful God. Vash means beautiful. El means God. So beautiful God. Anyway, but I saw the Father and the Son face to face in the flesh, and I embraced them both in the flesh. And I don't know. I don't know. It's just the experience that I've had. So anyway, so my wife told her mom about my experiences, and oh my gosh, why people? One thing I hate about the reservation is these dang people do not care about going the speed limit. Like, hey guy, like the speed limit's not 55, it's 65, and I can't get around you because I'm a semi truck. And I have a clock that counts against me all day long. Drives me nuts, these people. I don't mind driving through the res at night because these people are not here and there's less traffic and I can get around the other people that want to drive slow. Anyway, so her mom didn't want me to get married, so she tried to sabotage things, and she went and told the stake president about my experiences, and yeah, I got called into the stake president's office. Never met him before that day or after that day, and he asked me some very pointed questions, and I told him, yeah, I've had these experiences. And L. Tom Perry even came to interview me about one of them, and they actually documented, archived in the church archives, and I have the numbers for that and everything. Um, some stuff that is evidence of some of these things that have happened in my life. Anyway, so anyway, long story short, I get excommunicated for not even sharing it with everybody, but I believed in the Adam God doctrine. I still do. Um, I do not believe that, and I knew by revelation that Monson was not a prophet. And he was a prophet in 2012, and I can go into detail on that as well. Actually, dated his great niece. Oh man, we used to go to church with President Hinckley before he died in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building, and Marjorie, his wife. Anyway, like I can go off on all kinds of tangents, and there's more to the story. But so I was excommunicated for apostasy because I would not accept the Thomas Monson was a prophet, seer, and revelator because he doesn't have any of the fruits of being a prophet, seer, and revelator. And I told the stake president, I sustained him as the prophet of, as the president of the church, but there's no evidence that he's a prophet, seer, and revelator. And I personally had not had any experience where God has revealed that to me. And in fact, he actually did reveal to me that he was not a prophet, seer, and revelator. That's a different story. So, anyway, um, so I was excommunicated without being able to be at the trial. I was an over-the-road truck driver at the time. There was some blizzards. I wasn't able to get home. I pled with them to make my my trial of love, which it's not a trial of love, LDS Church. It's just control and manipulation. Anyway, but I wasn't allowed to even. Um, they didn't have the courtesy of letting me be at the trial. So all of these people that excommunicated me, it was all on the stake president's words, and he was very red-faced when I told him about some of my experiences, and yeah, he's a piece of crap, and I hope he burns in hell. The pious, religious bigots. Anyway, so yeah, I haven't been a member of the church since January of 2013, but I still believe Joseph Smith was a true prophet because of the experience that I had in my conversion, but also because of many, many, many other experiences that I've had with God and the study, the in-depth studies that I have been doing now for 30 years or 28 years, So anyway, yeah, that's my story. Hour and 16 minutes. And if you got to the end, thank you for getting to the end. Um, Obviously, it was interesting enough to where you can give it a like, subscribe. But yeah, there's like a whole bunch more. So anybody who has watched this, if you have any questions to give for me to give you details about the more, just go ahead and I do try to check the messages here. So anyway, all right, well, thank you for watching it, and I'm almost at Cayente, and I still have 5 hours of driving, and I've been driving I stopped at a rest area for 10 minutes. So I drove for like 2 hours, a little over 2 hours down to there. And then I've been driving for 2 hours and 46 minutes since I stopped. So I stopped 5 hours to go, and I have 2 hours and 43 minutes until I have to take a 30-minute break. So fun. Anyway, thank you everyone for watching this. And that's why I still believe Joseph Smith was a true prophet, and that's my experiences in the church. So, like I said, there's a lot more details, but I'm not getting into it here. So, I already probably got into more than I really was comfortable getting into. So.